Hey YouTube, this is Fragments of Memory, aka the Armchair Philosopher. Sometimes I go to McDonald's in my community and I sit down and I have a little meal, and I usually sit with the elderly folks, and they do like to spend their time at McDonald's. And I was getting into a discussion about life in general. I think we were discussing something about life, and I was just saying how even though we've experienced certain things, even though we've been through certain things in our lives, we often don't have a universal perspective. Because I was pointing out that I don't know everything, that I know nothing, because even with my experiences, they're tainted by something. No one experiences something in without any bias or slant. Whether it's a religious thing, whether it's a cultural thing, whether it's an ethnic thing, you're going to have you're going to experience certain situations a little bit differently, and you're going to, in order to give it meaning, you're going to put your own personal spin on it. Now, I had a older man disagree with me, and then I had this same older man then say, no young person can tell me anything. I've experienced it all. I've done it all. I've lived in this life. I've done it all, was his quote. Now, I'll concede to the fact that the older generation has been here, and that there is a certain wisdom to your from your elders. But does age equal automatic wisdom? I believe wisdom does come with age, but does merely living on the planet a certain amount of time automatically make you a wise individual? I would say not always. I mean, ideally, one should be progressing daily, and then you learn from your mistakes. You don't repeat any of them. And that's all a part of growing up and becoming who you are meant to be. But there are those who do foolish things even in their so-called golden years. And I find that their conversation always seems to be critical of the youth of the next generation, where young people don't know nothing. Young people don't know nothing. We know everything. Young people don't know nothing, and then that's how it seems to come out all the time. And I do feel that sometimes the elderly and just the older generation comes off very patronizing and very condescending. Like, I've lived my life, therefore I'm somehow superior to you. When in reality, you're not superior. Because just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean you're wiser. Because you could be 50 and be a fool. You could be 80 and be a fool. And you could be 22 and be wise. So just because you've experienced something doesn't necessarily mean you learned anything from it. And I'm always taken back to that one chapter in the Quran, chapter 18, and I've mentioned it here on YouTube, but there's a whole chapter of the Quran where it just talks about how we don't know everything, where we think we're seeing one thing or experiencing one thing, when in actuality we're experiencing we only see part of the puzzle. We don't see the full picture. We see a little portion of the picture, where there's another picture going on, and there may be something bigger going on than what we can perceive. And I also find that sometimes the advice of the older seems to always range on the negative. Like, I can remember being a young man, and every time I was eager to do something, I was always told why I shouldn't be doing it or the dangers involved. And yes, I understand that with dangers involved, you're protecting them, you're girding them up, you're making them be able to be informed and take calculated risks. But it just seems like, in the eyes of the older generation, the young can do no right. Uh, if you're 30 and making bad choices, you can't do no right. You ain't lived yet, quote unquote. You ain't lived yet. And sometimes that just frustrates for Jesus out of me. I'm gonna say that because I want to say something else. And sometimes I get pissed off because it's like, am I discounted only because I'm young? Or is my perspective worthless simply because I'm young? Or younger than you? Or maybe I didn't make the best choices, so now all of a sudden you're superior to me because somehow you have? So I just dislike how that comes off sometimes. This doesn't mean that I discount the advice or the guidance or the wisdom of those before me, but it does mean that I have a tendency to be angry about it. Sometimes I feel like the older generation just loves to complain. And they always seem to look at their past with these sort of romantic rose colored glasses when I know I'm sure in their generation, a lot of stuff that happens now didn't happen then, but nobody was 100% angelic. But I hate the fact that it gets framed that way. Well, that's just my 2 cents on the subject. Take care.